Elijah Vance ran a calloused thumb over the worn leather of the steering wheel. The hum of his old pickup truck, a familiar, melancholic lullaby on the desolate highway. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of morning light filtering through the grimy windshield, illuminating the subtle tremor in his hands. He was driving, not towards a destination he desired, but towards one dictated by a cruel whim. The crumpled, gilded invitation resting on the passenger seat felt like a branding. Its embossed script mocking his humble existence. It was from Seraphina Dubois, the city's reigning queen of opulence, a woman whose name was synonymous with impossible wealth and a chillingly sharp wit often wielded as a weapon. A sudden, sharp vibration jolted him, and his gaze snapped to the passenger seat. His old flip phone, a relic in an era of sleek smart devices, vibrated furiously. It was a text from his sister, a single emoji, a worried face. He didn't need to respond. She knew. Everyone in their small, tight-knit community knew about the joke Seraphina Dubois had, on a whim, decided to invite the town's most eligible bachelor of destitution, as her social media post had cruelly dubbed him, to her annual charity gala. The very thought made a cold knot tighten in his gut. He was a man of quiet dignity, his poverty a circumstance, not a character flaw. Yet, today, he was to be the main act in someone else's cruel comedy. A sudden image flashed in his mind, his polished, but scuffed, work boots resting on the dusty floorboards of his truck, a stark contrast to the gleaming marble he imagined at Seraphina's estate. A wave of unexpected resolve, cold and hard, settled over him. He wouldn't just attend, he would arrive. The Dubois estate, a sprawling monument to excess, glittered under the twilight sky. Valets, moving with the practiced grace of synchronized swimmers, whisked away an endless stream of luxury vehicles. Inside, the grand ballroom was a symphony of hushed conversations, clinking champagne flutes, and the rustle of designer gowns. Seraphina Dubois, a vision in emerald silk, stood at the top of the sweeping staircase, her eyes, like chips of glacial ice, scanning the arriving guests, a predatory smile playing on her lips. She was waiting for her pauper, her carefully crafted spectacle. She had subtly spread the word, ensuring her inner circle was primed for the grand entrance of Elijah Vance, the local legend of humble beginnings. A ripple of anticipation, laced with a touch of condescension, ran through the elite crowd. Suddenly, a distant thrum, a deep, pulsating beat, began to vibrate through the crystal chandeliers. It wasn't the bass of the orchestral music, nor the roar of another supercar. It was something heavier, more resonant. Conversations faltered, then died. Heads turned, first subtly, then overtly, towards the panoramic windows overlooking the estate's manicured lawns. The thrum grew into a powerful roar, a sound that made the very air tremble. Then, a dark silhouette, growing rapidly larger against the dying light, appeared over the tree line. It was a helicopter, sleek and black, its rotor blades slicing the air with a deafening rhythm. A collective gasp, soft at first, then spreading like wildfire, swept through the ballroom. Seraphina's perfectly arched eyebrows shot up, her predatory smile replaced by a flicker of confusion. This wasn't part of the joke. The helicopter descended with an impossible grace, settling softly on the pristine helipad usually reserved for Seraphina's own private jet. The rotor wash rippled through the garden, sending petals scattering like confetti. A figure emerged from the helicopter's dark interior. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a custom-tailored suit that whispered of quality rather than screamed of ostentation. His movements were fluid, deliberate, and imbued with an unspoken authority. As he walked towards the mansion's entrance, a hush, deep and absolute, fell over the crowded room. Every eye was fixed on him. It was Elijah Vance, but not the Elijah they knew, or thought they knew. His dark skin glowed under the mansion's lights, his broad shoulders squared, and his stride purposeful. He didn't walk with the timid uncertainty of a man out of his element, but with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged, not just here, but anywhere he chose to be. As he approached the grand entrance, the polished boots he wore, no longer scuffed, glinted under the chandeliers, striking an ironic counterpoint to the memory of dusty floorboards. Seraphina, momentarily stunned, descended the stairs, her confusion warring with a burgeoning sense of unease. Elijah met her gaze, not with defiance, but with a serene calm that bordered on unnerving. "Miss Dubois," he said, his voice a low, even baritone that carried clearly in the suddenly silent room. Thank you for the invitation. I trust I'm not late. The last word was infused with a subtle, almost imperceptible irony that only Seraphina, sharp as she was, could truly appreciate. She stammered, a rare occurrence for the usually unflappable heiress. Mr. Vance, I wasn't expecting this. She gestured vaguely towards the helicopter, then back to him, her eyes darting between his composed face and the sleek machine outside. A faint smile touched Elijah's lips. One tries to make an entrance, Mr. Bois. He extended a hand, not for a handshake, but gesturing towards the helipad. Perhaps a quick trip around the city. The views are rather spectacular tonight. The audacity, the sheer unexpectedness of it, hung in the air. The crowd remained silent, mesmerized by the unfolding drama. Seraphina, caught completely off guard, found herself nodding, a bewildered marionette. The helicopter ride was brief but impactful. As Elijah and Seraphina ascended, the city lights spread out beneath them like a glittering tapestry. Seraphina, for the first time in years, felt a tremor of genuine awe. Elijah, leaning back, spoke in a calm, almost detached voice about the city's forgotten neighborhoods, the stark contrast between the glittering skyscrapers and the struggling communities hidden in their shadows. He pointed out areas where the elderly lacked proper care, where children went to bed hungry, where dreams withered on cracked pavement. His words were not accusatory, but observational, imbued with a quiet sorrow that resonated in the confines of the cabin. You see, Mr. Bois, he said, turning to her, his eyes holding a depth she hadn't noticed before. Wealth isn't just about accumulation. It's about vision. It's about what you choose to see, and what you choose to ignore. He didn't wait for her reply. As they descended, the helicopter landed precisely on the helipad, drawing another round of hushed gasps from the guests who had spilled out onto the terrace. Back inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The air, once thick with judgment and polite amusement, now hummed with a palpable curiosity. People whispered, their gazes following Elijah as he moved through the crowd. He wasn't mingling in the typical sense. Rather, he seemed to observe, to listen. Across the room, a small figure sat quietly in a motorized wheelchair, largely unnoticed by the glittering throng. His name was Leo, a young boy with bright, intelligent eyes and a body that refused to obey him. He was the son of one of the estate's long-serving groundskeepers, allowed to attend the gala as a silent, almost invisible observer. Leo often felt like a ghost in these opulent spaces, his presence acknowledged only by pitying glances. Tonight, however, his gaze was fixed on Elijah Vance. There was something in the man's quiet strength that resonated with the boy's own inner world. A few minutes later, Elijah found himself near a secluded corner where Leo was attempting to maneuver his wheelchair, his small hands struggling with the controls. Without a word, Elijah knelt down, his expensive suit creasing slightly, and gently guided Leo's hands, showing him a simpler way to navigate the chair. He spoke to Leo in a soft, encouraging tone, not of pity, but of shared understanding. A small smile, rare and beautiful, blossomed on Leo's face. Suddenly, a loud, imperious voice cut through the air. Elijah, there you are. It was Mr. Henderson, the city's notoriously self-important judge, Seraphina's confidant, and a man who had often, in his official capacity, dismissed Elijah's pleas for community funding for various projects with a wave of his hand. Henderson, a sneer plastered on his face, approached them. Still playing the benevolent pauper, I see. A grand entrance won't change your bank balance, Vance. His words were laced with venom, designed to humiliate. Elijah stood, his posture unwavering. And a grand title, Judge Henderson, won't change the contents of one's character. Henderson chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Character, my dear man, character is built on success, on achievement. Not on what you represent. He glanced pointedly at Leo, a dismissive flick of his eyes. Poverty is a choice, Mr. Vance. Before Elijah could respond, Leo, with a strength that belied his frail frame, spoke, his voice surprisingly clear. No, sir, he said, looking directly at the judge. Poverty isn't always a choice. And kindness, he added, looking at Elijah, with admiration, is always a choice. The judge, taken aback by the child's unexpected interjection, faltered. A ripple went through the nearby guests who had been drawn by Henderson's booming voice. They had heard the child's quiet defense. Seraphina, who had been observing the exchange with a strange mix of apprehension and grudging respect, felt a prickle of discomfort. Later, as the evening progressed, Elijah found himself at a buffet table, a simple plate in his hand. He noticed a waitress, her face tired but her eyes sparkling with an inner light, struggling to carry a heavy tray. Without hesitation, he reached out, steadying the tray for her, a small gesture of genuine kindness. The waitress, surprised, offered him a tired but grateful smile. "Thank you, sir," she murmured. "Just helping out," Elijah replied, his voice gentle. Suddenly, the DJ played an upbeat, joyous song, and a few guests began to dance. Lo, watching from his wheelchair, tapped his fingers on the armrest, a wistful look in his eyes. The waitress, seeing his longing, hesitated for a moment, then, with a mischievous grin, wheeled him onto the dance floor. She began to sway with him, her steps fluid, her laughter infectious, guiding his wheelchair in a gentle dance. The sight, so pure and unpretentious amidst the calculated glamour, drew the attention of the crowd. Serafina, watching from a distance, felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. It was a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a stark contrast to the cold calculations that usually governed her world. The night wore on, and the conversations around Elijah grew more subdued, more genuine. Guests who had initially scoffed now approached him, their questions no longer laced with mockery, but with a genuine desire to understand. One elderly gentleman, a renowned philanthropist known for his aloofness, found himself drawn into a conversation with Elijah about sustainable community development. "Mr. Vans," the man said, his voice tinged with surprise, "your understanding of these issues is remarkable, far beyond what one would expect from someone of your background." Elijah simply smiled. "Background, sir, is often a matter of perspective and experience. The best teacher, his quiet confidence, his refusal to be anything but himself, was disarming." He wasn't trying to impress, wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply existing, with an unshakable dignity that resonated deeper than any display of wealth. At one point, a loud alarm blared from outside the mansion. A sleek, expensive sports car, parked haphazardly near the entrance, had a flat tire, and its owner, a young, arrogant scion of a tech empire, was frantically trying to figure out what was wrong. His expensive watch glinted in the security lights as he fumbled with the complex system. Elijah, who had stepped outside for a moment, observed the scene. He walked over, his movements unhurried. "Trouble?" he asked, his voice calm. The young man scoffed. "As if you'd know. This is a limited edition, custom built. It's not some beat-up truck you can just kick." Elijah knelt, examining the tire. He didn't touch it. His gaze, sharp and knowing, swept over the car's undercarriage, its intricate mechanics. He then straightened, his expression unreadable. "It's not the tire," he said. "It's the suspension system. A pressure imbalance in the right rear hydraulic. Common issue in this model if not properly maintained after high-speed driving." The young man stared, his mouth agape. How? How could you possibly know that?" "I used to work on cars," Elijah replied simply, a faint memory of his younger days, when he'd taken odd jobs at a mechanic's shop to put food on the table, flashing through his mind. High-end ones too, for a while. A man learns many skills when he has to. He then walked away, leaving the stunned young man to process his words. He hadn't offered to fix it, hadn't sought praise or payment. He had simply revealed a secret. Skill, then moved on. As the night neared its end, Serafina found herself standing alone, observing Elijah. The initial smirk satisfaction of her joke had long evaporated, replaced by a growing sense of discomfort, and surprisingly, a grudging admiration. She had tried to humiliate him, to make him a spectacle of her power. Instead, he had turned her elaborate stage into his own, transforming a moment of calculated cruelty into a testament to his quiet strength. The silence in the ballroom was broken only by the soft strains of a piano. Elijah, after a brief conversation with Leo and the waitress, who had just shared a slice of cake with the boy, began to make his way towards the exit. He didn't grandstand, didn't seek a final farewell. He simply began to walk away, his presence still commanding, even in departure. But then, Serafina did something entirely out of character. She cleared her throat, a small, almost imperceptible sound that somehow managed to cut through the soft music. "Mr. Vans," she called out. Her voice, though still commanding, held a tremor of something new. Elijah paused at the grand entrance. Turning to face her, Serafina descended the staircase. Again, this time with a different demeanor. Her shoulders were less rigid, her expression less guarded. She stopped a few steps above him, her gaze meeting his directly. The entire ballroom, sensing a pivotal moment, fell into a profound silence. "Mr. Vance," she began, her voice gaining strength, though a blush crept onto her cheeks. I owe you an apology." The words, so foreign on her tongue, sounded almost alien. "This evening was conceived as a jest, a regrettable attempt at humor at your expense. I was wrong, terribly so." She took a deep breath, her eyes flicking around the silent, watching crowd. "You have, tonight, demonstrated a depth of character, a quiet dignity, and a strength of spirit that has humbled me." And she added, her voice dropping to a lower, more sincere tone, "You have taught me a valuable lesson about true wealth and true worth." The air hung heavy with the weight of her words. No one spoke. Then a single clap echoed through the room. It came from Leo, still in his wheelchair, his small hands coming together in a slow, deliberate applause. One by one, then in a growing wave, others joined in. The applause started softly, then swelled, filling the grand ballroom with a resounding ovation. It wasn't just for Elijah, but for the truth that had been laid bare, for the powerful person who had, for once, acknowledged their own fallibility. The sound was a symphony of respect, admiration, and a shared understanding of a lesson learned. Elijah Vance stood amidst the rising applause, his expression unreadable. He offered Seraphina a small, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His quiet strength, his silent dignity, had done all the talking. He then turned and walked out of the mansion, the applause following him like a lingering echo. He walked with purpose, his new polished boots striding confidently over the paved driveway. As he reached the waiting helicopter, the pilot, a man he had known from his days in the military, gave him a respectful salute. Elijah simply smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that reached his eyes. He stepped into the helicopter, the powerful machine lifting off into the night, carrying him away from the glittering world he had so unexpectedly shaken. Seraphina stood at the mansion's entrance, watching the helicopter's lights fade into the distance. She felt a profound sense of loss, not of a potential acquisition, but of an opportunity to truly connect with a remarkable human being. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her, that she had learned the truth too late. The jest had backfired spectacularly, and the joke was ultimately on her. She had tried to break him, but he had, instead, quietly, gracefully, broken through her own hardened shell. Behind her, the philanthropic gentleman who had spoken with Elijah earlier approached Seraphina. "Miss Dubois," he said, his voice soft. "Perhaps there is a way to support Mr. Vance's community initiatives. I believe he mentioned something about a youth center." Seraphina turned to him, her eyes still holding a trace of wonder. "Yes," she said, her voice surprisingly firm. "Yes, there is. And this time, it won't be a joke." As the night wound down, Seraphina, for the first time in a very long time, felt a flicker of inspiration, a desire to use her vast resources not for show, but for genuine, quiet change, a testament to the man who had arrived in a helicopter and shocked everyone, but most importantly, had quietly, profoundly changed her.